My content calls you into your power, most especially pure-hearted and intuitive humans into their power. This transmission is going to be about the pure-hearted warrior. If you're curious about this, or if it speaks to your soul, if you're feeling resonance in the room, make sure to stick around and listen to this transmission in full so that you are able to receive, digest, integrate the fullest sense of this transmission for your embodied benefit. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I'm Ashtyn. I'm a teacher, seer, and mentor for grounded mystics. What this means is that I don't serve false light. I serve embodiment in those who are doing the real work. My monthly video transmissions are here to support those who are doing the real work to heal, digest, integrate, validate, receives codes, downloads to deeply align with inside of themselves, their soul, their true path, their purpose, to embody to the fullest degree their power. If this is something that interests you and you are not already subscribed to my monthly newsletter, make sure that you subscribe. The link is below in the comments. And if you are a return visitor and subscriber, I welcome you back. I'm very much so looking forward to dropping more deeply into this transmission with you today. A previously recorded transmission that I want to mention because it connects in to some of what is going to come through in this transmission about the pure-hearted warrior is the integrating of the fire element. So if you have not already watched that video, make sure that you do so after listening to this. If we're going to talk about the pure-hearted warrior, we're going to need to talk about false and true archetypes, because there is a true archetype of the pure-hearted warrior that is deeply integrated. For example, the integration with the fire element and the heart element all simultaneously intact, versus a false light version of the warrior that is oftentimes referred to as the peaceful warrior. Let me just say that the quote unquote peaceful warrior is an outcome of an agenda to imprint a wounded feminine energetic on top of the true masculine. So let me explain. The peaceful warrior most often is seen within false light communities. I also call these faux conscious communities because it's not truly embodied consciousness. There are distortions inside of false light, and this comes with its own kind of agendas. So, false light is to take on the wounded feminine in place of the true masculine. This is really, really important. In my teachings, I talk about how truth is not in two quadrants. I say it's not two quadrants, it's four quadrants. Let me break this down for you. So if we look at things in two quadrants, we would be looking at like light and dark, masculine and feminine. This is not the fullest extent of what is actually occurring, because there is a true dark, a pure dark, as I refer to it, and a false or malevolent dark. There's also a true light, and there's also a false light. Okay, so we're going to get into some integration of masculine and feminine, but just a little bit here, because it's very important for you to really understand the true archetype of the warrior. The base code, that's the language I use in my teachings, the base code in dark is feminine, as in the origination point of the dark is feminine. From the dark was born the light. This gave birth to the sun, which is the father, which is the masculine element. So the masculine brings in the essence of light. So light is base code masculine. When we're looking at false light, what is happening is that a wounded version, okay, a wounded form of feminine, not a true feminine version, is now siphoning off of the source of true light. So what happens here is an inversion where instead of the masculine, which would be like the warrior who holds a sword of truth, okay, He is a protector of truth and worlds and innocence and new paradigms. Instead of him being an anchor in the world who is able to wield fire, the element of fire holds truth in it, it holds illumination in it, it holds like direction. And that means also speaking directly. There's a penetrative nature to it, like it will slice through illusion. Instead of it being the true warrior and the true light, it imprints a wounded feminine imprint on the light. This becomes false light. So, what that looks like would be men who are operating in this peaceful warrior archetype. And because it's framed as peace, people will accept this as true, but it's actually that you're in collapse. Like, you're not a man with a sword. You're someone who is abiding by a good person persona. So you're creating a false identity, okay, a persona to produce the illusion of goodness instead of actually wielding a sword of truth. Very, very different. I hope that this is translating. And if it's only translating partially, that is totally fine. Know that there are energetics inside of these transmissions. And there are things here that you may not recognize, identify, know, or be able to digest in the moment. That actually speaks to the quality of the transmission, because this means that there is so much here for you to ultimately receive. And in due time, trust that what is meant for you will land for you, as long as you are really available for it to land. Okay. So part of what I'm saying here is that there is an agenda to feminize the masculine, but it is not to integrate with the feminine. The true masculine integrates the feminine. That's how he becomes. I have a lot of transmissions about that. This takes a wounded version of the feminine. And a wounded feminine is going to present herself through a persona, usually the good girl persona. Like there's some level of goodness and innocence within her that actually isn't true to her core. So she will operate in more of like a non-direct way. For example, being passive aggressive, right? She won't request for her needs to be met in a very direct and clear way. Instead, she will manipulate, usually through her emotions, in order to get her needs met. So the peaceful warrior archetype is actually a request to ask for those of us who are here to be warriors, to stand down and submit to a false identity of goodness rather than rising in our embodied power. That is very important. Like, let it land in your body. It is actually to extract the true masculine from the essence of warrior. And we cannot have warrior without the true essence of the masculine. You need the true masculine embedded into the archetype of warrior for it to be a true archetype of the warrior. Okay, so this is why they strip the masculine out and go, hey, it's a peaceful warrior. We need people who stand in truth, who stand even in justice and righteousness in a very powerful way. And I'm not talking about through a false sense of superiority like we oftentimes see in forms of social activism. I'm talking about standing for truth no matter what. And this is where truth is actually embodied. You can feel it aligned all the way within your core and through you. Like you are standing for something that is genuinely deeper, and it's also rooted. It's not dogma. It's not an idea or belief that was given to you. It is something that you have lived through and therefore now embody and are able to see clearly within side of illusion. So the sword of truth is connected to truth, which means that it pierces through illusion. A peaceful warrior doesn't pierce through illusion. They're literally existing in an archetype of distortion. Here are some things that I wrote relative to false light versus embodied warriorship. It is cowardice calling itself conscious versus courage to uphold truth in any room, to illuminate where illumination is needed. When you are embodying the true warrior, you don't blend to belong. Listen to that. You don't blend to belong. False light blends to belong. It is a persona. Personas blend to belong. Instead of blending to belong to something that is false, you belong to truth first and foremost, period. This means that if you end up standing out among the crowd because the crowd is full of faux conscious spirituality, then so be it, because your commitment, your alignment is to truth first and foremost. The pure-hearted warrior is pure to the core, okay? So like you have this core of goodness that exists within inside of you. It's probably been here with you since the day that you arrived, and you've always known this about yourself. That tends to be the case for me, and that tends to be the case for my clients and the people who end up nearing me. So the pure-hearted warrior is pure to the core, while strong enough to face the dark. Warriors know battle, to include spiritual battle. They can see behind the scenes. Okay, so we need to drop into this a bit more. False lights, because I said there are 4 quadrants, not 2, right? We now need to talk a little bit about the dark, because there's a pure dark and there's a false or malevolent dark. The pure dark is the true feminine. It's the origination of all of creation. It is the void, it is the womb, it is the nothingness, which birthed everything. It is the dark mother, which initiates you. And the dark mother will bring you into terrains of darkness, things that you are needing to look at, become aware of. Like her initiations will activate you and call you into this deep gravitational pull relative to a surrender, right? Like you're surrendering false identities, you're surrendering persona, you're surrendering illusion, you're surrendering beliefs that are not actually true to the core of who you are. You are surrendering rose-tinted glasses too. There are things that when you surrender into the dark mother's gravitational pull, you will come into contact to include new awarenesses and the ability to see in the dark. The ability to see in the dark. You actually face the dark. False light has a persona of consciousness while it resists becoming conscious in a true embodied way. The pure-hearted warrior, that is the true archetype. You are someone who knows the dark, and you know the dark well, because you have allowed the dark mother to call you into dark nights of soul and otherwise initiatory processes. And you know that love is found there. You know that truth is also found there. And you are courageous enough to let go and have losses of things that are untrue, relationships, professions, different ideas and beliefs. You therefore strengthen, you grow a capacity, you move differently, you resurrect and rise into the light with more power, with a swifter sword. You can see the illusion because you allowed yourself to go so deeply in the dark that you could literally see it within yourself or within society itself or on a universal, omniversal level to very high degrees. And all of a sudden, now you're like, foo, 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 foo. You can see in the dark. That's also part of what crafts your sword. So when we're talking about the true or the pure-hearted warrior versus a false archetype of the warrior, like the peaceful warrior as an example, the peaceful warrior is not addressing the dark directly at all. It's suppressing the dark within itself and claiming it is the light. There's a big difference there. You end up going into battle. Like there is battle here on earth, to include spiritual warfare, that is operating through the unseen. And when you are initiated, much of the time, the Dark Mother is calling you into unseen, internal kind of spaces in order for you to come into forms of embodied truth that can directly face those things. You become more aware of the spiritual warfare. You become more aware of the behind the scenes. You become more aware of the truth and what is truly true versus illusion. So you have gone through battle. You have faced the dark in many ways and on many days. And this has become your strength. This is where you can hold a sword. You actually have the proper armor. And I'm not talking armor that doesn't allow your heart to be your heart or goodness within you to be your goodness. It's actually the protection that is needed for your innocence and purity, that which exists within inside of you. All of a sudden now you're not like an empathic open orifice. Okay, we're going to get into this because there's a difference between empathic power and empathic collapse, an empath without boundaries versus an empath with boundaries. And the sword and the element of fire, the masculine, is what actually supports you in having true identity. So, verse false ego, and in a persona, you have your true identity, which is your soulful identity, and also having boundaries. And boundaries are super important to include when we are talking about the unseen, because there are unseen energetics that are going on all of the time. Again, we are existing within a battlefield. And so when you're the warrior and you are someone who has boundaries, you can show up inside of battle differently. Whereas if you are empathic and you haven't yet gone through these processes of initiation to actually become the warrior you are meant to be, you will be more like an open orifice on a battlefield. You'll be more like the peaceful warrior. Like you're sitting here and you're like being just very open to all things, everything. You're not being swift. You're not being clear. You're not being boundaried. You're not seeing where truth is and illusion is, where the true light is and the true dark is versus the false light and the false dark. You're not seeing clearly in the way that you need to see clearly if you're going to operate like a general on a battlefield, like the baddie that you are. So we have to address within ourselves the places where we fear the dark and also the places where we fear our power, your power. If you are highly perceptive and intuitive and you are a seer, you are meant to see in the dark. That means you're also meant to face the dark. That also means you're meant to alchemize the dark. You're meant to go on to battlefields and be the light. You're not meant to be the light over here, back here, over here, all in avoidance. That's not how it's meant to work. You're meant to know the difference between, for example, true power and false power. When you really understand true power, then you recognize that there is a degree of hierarchy where true power supersedes false power. What that means is that you can go into rooms where people are embodying illusion, for example, faux consciousness, and you can be the truth in the room. You can speak the thing. You can speak the thing that you see. You don't blend to belong. You speak and hold the embodiment of truth in the room, no matter the degree of resistance that you might face as a result. That is what it is to be a warrior, a true, pure-hearted warrior. Because your goodness is so good that it doesn't need to belong to a good person persona, which is false. It is so good that it is anchoring and aligning truth in every room that you stand in relentlessly. What I wrote is you aren't afraid to go into the dark, to face predation head on, to illuminate no matter the resistance, to speak truth in rooms full of illusion. You're no longer attempting to fit a good person persona. Your commitment to truth is greater than an identity. Feel it. Like, feel the coding behind the words that I am speaking. Let it actually land into your body. And if you haven't embodied this degree or level of power, know that it's on its way as long as you choose that trajectory. Like, I speak powerfully, I model powerfully, and it is because I have become powerful. It is because I have surrendered that which was less than me, to include a need to belong to that which isn't true. And you can do this too. Let's give an example. You are in a relationship, and in your relationship, this same kind of loop or dynamic continuously comes into the relationship. And what it is it's a pattern in your partner where they are holding a specific adaptation and kind of auto responding behavior when conflict occurs. And what you've done is try all of these ways to soothe and submit, and you dim and you get softer and you get quieter and you try to find a million and one ways to say the thing. But what you haven't done yet is speak it directly. Speak directly to the pattern, uphold that person accountable, and walk away. Because it's not yours to hold. It's not your empathic responsibility to do the work for anyone except for yourself. That would be enabling, and enabling is not pure. It is not true, and it does not transform. Right? So this is one example. We also have family dynamics. We have ancestral patterns. There might be things that have been happening within your family system, and everyone in their own way is kind of defaulting to a particular role, and then adaptations around particular roles. And there isn't transformation happening. What's happening is enabling and doubling down on a dysfunctional pattern in your family system. But you're meant to be the alchemist inside of your family line. How are you to lead your family line into truth and away from this dysfunction if you aren't even willing to stand among the illusion and be truth in the room no matter what, no matter how anyone chooses to respond to you? You just hold swiftly, this is truth, and that's it. This is the thing that just happened, and I'm pointing it out. Instead, so many empaths, and empaths are powerful humans. They're meant to be in their power. But what will happen is you will submit to the dysfunction. You will dim. You will get quiet. You will get meek. You will be in cowardice rather than your courage. You will go invisible and be like, why am I not being seen, and why am I not being met? Well, are you courageously standing in the room? Are you your own anchor? Are you speaking directly? Are you being in your power? How are you to expect other people to see you or even meet you when you're not willing to see and meet yourself and hold yourself in the fullest degree of the truth of your own nature, to include in rooms full of resistance? I want you to be in your power. This is work that I facilitate with my clients. I have a 6-month cohort called Highly Perceptive. It is for highly perceptive, empathic humans to rise in their power, to be able to see very clearly dysfunctional patterns and then also speak it, to uphold boundaries where boundaries uphold people accountable for their behavior, to unravel the ancestral and dysfunctional relational patterns, to be the alchemist that you are. If that's something that interests you, go visit my website at trueselfembodied.com. Here's another thing that I wrote on empathic power, okay, versus empathic collapse. Now, empathic power is where your intuitive, highly perceptive capabilities are then applied into the external world in a very powerful way. Because are you meant to just walk around seeing but not addressing anything? Probably not, right? You're meant to transform the environments that you are in, not to dim to accommodate the dysfunctional environments that you exist within. So this is where the empath is no longer like a victim of their gifts. They are a practitioner of their gifts. They are an embodiment of their gifts. They are rising power within inside of their gifts. I wrote this. Empathic power versus empathic collapse. You do not soften, nor do you dim in the presence of dysfunction, narcissism, injustice, projection, invalidation, etc. You address it swiftly and directly. Do you see what I'm saying? That is the spiritual warrior. What has happened is you now command power, and people will feel it. You are an experience. Environments start to calibrate to you rather than you ongoingly calibrating to them. You have now individuated, because with the masculine integration piece is also in the transmission about integrating the fire element. When you become the true pure-hearted warrior and you now have the warrior within you, grounded and anchored, you are individuated, because base code masculine is individuation, because the masculine is separation. And so you have now your sword where you can move it very swiftly, because you can see the difference again between illusion and truth, between yourself and others as well. You move differently. I want to provide you an example of commanding power. And I'm going to offer you something that came through for me earlier today. I was going to the grocery store. There's someone who lives locally who I considered dating, did date for a period of time. And he ended up being a psychically inclined narcissist who therefore was a predator. Now, before your judgment comes in, because I am highly advanced and very conscious, you might go, oh, well, why was she with a narcissist? It was a part of my initiations that are ongoing. The degree or level of narcissism that I have gotten to in my own personal process differs in a spectrum of consciousness. What I'm saying is, I have gotten to such a degree in my own consciousness that low-grade narcissists would not be able to fool me. So what has happened in my journey is that I have been brought to men who are really psychic and really intelligent narcissists. And so they can create even energetic signatures surrounding them that feel like they're the true masculine when really they're not. And no matter how wise you are, no matter how far along on your journey you are, we have to stop blaming the victim. And we have to recognize, even by humbling ourselves and knowing that no matter how far we have come, we can be deceived. There's an intention to deceive, which came through this person toward me. But it's how quick you notice it. It's how quick you respond. It's how, even in micro moments, you uphold accountability and truth and you watch them, which I'm very good at. And then they'll just fly out of your field, which has also happened. But what also happened is now I see him. Now I know who you are. Now I know how you operate. I know what side you are operating on. I know how you are feasting off the feminine. I know how you're hunting priestesses. Okay, I see you, right? This is an experience that the empath is meant to have coming into contact with the narcissist. It's actually meant to bring you into greater awareness with the false dark and to be able to individuate, to know yourself as different than the narcissist. So an empath narcissist equation is about your power, your boundaries, your individuation, among other things. But those are 3 core lessons. So I was thinking about this person when I was going into the grocery store, just being like, ooh, if I saw him, what would I do? I'm not saying this out of fear. I'm not asking this out of fear. What would you do? And I was like, well, I already know what I would do. I would point out that he's a predator, because he is. And I don't care who's around. The more people, the better. Warn your children and your mothers. Like, warn all the women that you know in this community, this person is a predator, right? This is what I mean. The warrior does that. The warrior stands on the battlefield and illuminates, points to the thing. It doesn't let predation move in invisible places, unseen places, suppression, and secrecy. It will speak directly to the predation, to the injustice. It will illuminate it in the rooms. A lot of people fear doing that, especially those who are intuitive, for many reasons. But one of them is the violence that will come toward us, but also the lifetimes that we have faced where we've been crucified for illuminating the dark, like the false dark. So you also have to do work to unravel those things back to really arrive into your power. Like, this isn't like this transmission, all of a sudden you're going to rise in your power, you're being in your power completely and totally tomorrow. You want to work with a practitioner such as myself to really do the depth level work that will get you to the place of actually anchoring the warrior in an embodied way inside of your life. So this is what I wrote when I was thinking of this person and potentially seeing him in the grocery store. What I said and I heard in my mind was, "You flew too close to the sun, and now my light illuminates your illusion everywhere you go." I want to be clear that I'm not just speaking this metaphorically. I'm speaking this because I'm declaring it. Because true power overrides false power. Be careful coming into contact with a powerful woman who can see and whose field relentlessly upholds accountability. This is when the hunter becomes the prey. Okay, we're going to do a perspective shift here. I really need you to be with this. This is where the hunter becomes the prey. I refer to this man as a priestess hunter because he is. There are men that literally hunt radiant women in order to source off of them. They know that they're the greatest feasts to be found energetically. And so they pursue us intentionally. And what can happen is when a man finds a woman like this, maybe they even date for a little bit. Oftentimes, he will attempt to energetically hunt and feed from her, even after they have parted ways in the physical. I work with women deeply, deeply in untethering energetics from narcissistic past partners, fathers, and then like other men within their life. This especially is common between men to women, men feasting off of women, because most men have not actually accessed their own source in the source, which understands and reveres the original mother. And so what they do is they find women who have that codex, like that coding within inside of their system, and they feast from the feminine. But also what I term patriarchal energetics, they reverberate feasting off the feminine essence. Like, that's a whole other teaching on its own. But just so we understand why I'm using the wording and the way that I'm using it, because it's more common in this direction. So there are men who intentionally hunt and feast off the feminine essence, and this man was one of them. And so what they will commonly do, as I said, is continue to try to feast off her even when they have parted. But what I am saying is, you don't get to hunt me. You don't get to feast from me. My light illuminates you everywhere you go. It's sort of like, instead of them hunting or haunting you, your light, which is truth, is haunting them. And you are declaring it in the field, because true power gets to declare. True power gets the say. True power overrides the say of false power. You can only uphold these types of declarations, understandings, and knowings when you are truly embodying your true power. It won't work any other way. It'll be like flimsy, like a statement that you said, but it's like it doesn't hold in the field because you haven't anchored power inside of yourself. There's a deeper thing that I'm actually pointing to here, which is when you are submitting to the idea of a good person persona, you would never declare something like this. You would view that as being wrong or bad. You're not allowed to do that. Oh no, that would mean that you're bad. Like that means I'm not a good person. But that's not true. Because think about it. As an alchemist, would you not want light to be illuminating dark constantly, relentlessly, every day? The only way for true liberation would be in that formation. That is what is true. That is what is right. That is what is just. I've been hearing through my channel a lot lately. I'm terming this the era of consequence. At the time of recording this transmission, we're about to be in 2026. The era of consequence says to me, we receive based on our choosing. So what this means is that if you have chosen to serve malevolence, to serve illusion, to serve dysfunction, to serve harm, you will receive based on your choosing. Is that not just? Is that not fair? If you have chosen like true goodness, true rightness, deep forms of accountability, surrender to the dark mother to go through initiations that are necessitated for you to become more in alignment, then you will receive that. Is that not true? Like, is that not true? Is that not fair? Is that not just? When we are empathic and we are pure-hearted and we arrive to earth with a kind of soft, gentle gooiness that lives inside of our innocence and purity, which are my people, those are my people, before we have become initiated by the fire, before we have integrated in the masculine and also the true warrior, what happens is that we actually don't uphold accountability for others. More often than not, we will enable it, thinking that we're the healer. Because you cannot do the work for another. So, for example, an empath that dates a narcissist, particularly like earlier on in their journey, it's like they'll be like, turn into the rescuer. I'm going to heal you. They don't want to be healed. They want you to be their food. There's a difference. You're not upholding them accountable for their behaviors because, for example, if you were, you would leave them. You're staying to feed them. You're feeding that which exists within inside of them that is empty and soulless. Do you know why empaths commonly do this? It's because they fear their own power. And if you're getting fed upon, you don't have to hold your own soul and its expansion and its bigness and its fullness. You are able to stay invisible, quiet, submissive, and suppressed. So again, this is something that the narcissist is meant to teach you if you receive the full lesson that it is. In the era of consequence, we need to perspective shift our goodness away from a good person lens into this deep, embodied, anchored rightness that isn't a framework of superiority. I call it ignorant superiority. It's like when you are on your superior good person high horse. That's more so the good person persona. Okay. I'm talking about like an anchored, deeper truth. Whew, this is the thing. The empath will misframe accountability as harm onto another person. And so what you will do is you will submit. You will become the peaceful warrior. You put down the sword of truth. You lay it on the ground. You become the open orifice. Instead of knowing you have your armor, walking straight into the darkness, like the false dark, looking at it as truth contained with your sword in hand and giving the consequence, upholding accountability appropriately in response to the harm that was caused. This is not vengeance. This is not revenge. That is not what I'm talking about. You have to really follow the energetics and what I'm saying precisely to understand truly what I'm getting at. Otherwise, you'll go off here and there and frame it in a way that isn't even, it's not in truth. I'm going to give an example that's energetic. Let's say that someone, they get upset and they start shooting daggers energetically at you. Now, this has happened to me many times inside of my life because I am a truth speaker. I initiate and I activate, and this can trigger people and it can bring war to my door. But that war to my door has actually strengthened me to be in my power. It has made me be in my power. So they start sending energetic daggers, and what you will do is you'll go, okay, oh, they're sending me energetic daggers. Maybe you go invisible. Maybe you put up shields of protection. And that's what I did for a very long time. I had different ways. I'm not going to get into all the ways, but essentially to manage these things. And about a month or so ago, I was like, nah, you don't get to shoot daggers at me. I push back. I'm not going to meet your weakness with weakness. Because, for example, I would go, okay, it U-turns back to you. Everything you sent to me, it just goes back to you. But that's meeting their weakness with weakness. Now your weakness is going to meet my power. So instead, here comes this. This. A lot of good-hearted, pure-hearted, empathic, intuitive, to include energetically experienced people will not it back. Why? Why? Does your power not have the ability to meet that person with the harm? We need to start becoming a mirror that is accurate to the infraction. This is the era of consequence. Grace doesn't need to be provided to those who are intentionally and otherwise harming. They need to be receiving what they are giving. And if they are shooting at someone, for example, as powerful as me, why would they not receive my power on the other side of it? Relative to the era of consequence, I said you receive based on your choosing. Accurate response, accurate mirror. Medicine provided is equal to the context of the circumstance. You get the mirror you need, not the mirror that you want. If you're familiar with my social media, my main platform is Facebook. People learn a lot from watching how I interact with people who come into my space and speak ill will against me or their own projections and invalidation. They wield things energetically at me. The way that I uphold my boundaries and the way that I will what is needed is a skill. I'm not going to get soft and try to explain to you why it was wrong. I'm going to uphold you in accountability for the infraction. I'm going to mirror your poison back to you. And then there will be people that then go, oh, well, you're not that conscious. No, I'm embodied and not upholding a persona of being conscious. There's a difference. So I'm actually more conscious. This is going to be the last part of this transmission, and it is really important. I work with the most incredible, pure-hearted humans that are highly multidimensional, and many of them are ancient souls that hold mother seeds and mother codes. These are people who existed on what I call mother planets. Mother planets are planets of origination. Within the omniverse, they were some of the first born. Now, those planets, though they were beautifully harmonic, harmony, sound is feminine, okay? Structure is masculine. Though they were beautifully harmonic, peaceful, loving, these were wonderful planets with just like the sweetest ecologies. They were unprotected. They did not have masculine integration. They did not have structure to hold those harmonies. Structure, think of it like an armor around a planet, okay? The armor was missing around the planet. It kept these spaces as sort of open orifices. And then what happened was the false dark came to these planets, bringing war to those planets' doors. It was devastating. In the harmonies of these planets, there was no understanding of the false dark. It did not exist within these spaces, not yet. And so it's sort of like beings in a false dark coming into your home, and it's so foreign. It's like an alien. You've never seen it before. You can't even make sense of it. What happens is that there is a memory that is held inside of the soul, inside of the body when we've incarnated as in physical form. And this is a part of your multidimensional history where your body remembers. Your body remembers those high harmonics, and that's a part of the core of you that is the innocence and the goodness, your codex. And that is like, I would say the most important foundation is that core of innocence. You bring that with you. And at the same time, you now have a memory where this malevolent dark came to your dimension, planetary system, whatever it was, and destroyed it. And everyone, there's no armor, there's no sword, there's no protection, there's not even understanding, okay, of the malevolent dark. This is very similar to an empath's experience coming into contact with their first narcissist. You believe that the goodness inside of you also exists inside of the other person standing next to you. But the person that is narcissistic is an empty vessel. They don't have that inside of them. This is what I mean about individuation and understanding difference, which comes through masculine integration. So these planets had no protection, no defense, no even understanding of what was going on. With these clients that I work with, we have to do healing work around this. And the healing process is to understand that there was missing pieces of integration that were masculine, that were the warrior, that is the sword, that is the fire, that is individuation, that understands the difference between pure light, pure dark, false light, false dark, and then has the skills, has come into power, has greater armor, which is structure, which also translates into the human experience as something like boundaries. And so we go through the human experience, healing that fracture, that trauma on this original mother planet through your experience of strengthening and integrating the masculine element so that you become the warrior that can return inevitably after restoration to the mother seed, to your home planet, and you can gift it greater structure that it is needing in order to come back into its fullest, most primed, integrated states where the high harmonies are properly held. This is just like me saying your pure goodness is properly held by the structure, by things like boundaries. So remember, I said we need this perspective shift where it's like, oh, you're not allowed to fight back. You're not allowed to fight back. Yeah, you are. This is the era of consequence. And again, fighting back is not vengeance. It's not revenge. Like when you are in the innocent space, you recognize like that doesn't even exist there. It doesn't live there at all. This is upholding truth. This is upholding accountability. This is upholding true power above false power. This is upholding boundaries. This is meeting a malevolent form of darkness and harm with your goodness and your power intact, integrated with your warrior that fights back. That goes, no, I don't become the peaceful warrior and have a good person persona and become an open orifice and put all of the armor and my sword down. I stand with it all because I am it all. I have full permission to be everything that I am and have become. This means that when someone brings energetic or otherwise war to your door, they know they're about to find out. You are allowed to be that. You are allowed to uphold that. But in order to get to the point where you truly can, you have to go through the integration and initiation processes that are required to really fully embody it. Like, you can't mimic what I'm saying. You can only embody it. And that's what I invite people into through the work that I provide. It's an invitation into deeper and deeper forms of embodiment. If this transmission really spoke to you and you recognize and identify yourself as a pure-hearted warrior, I'm going to tell you that the very best space that you will ever come across is my membership group. It's called the Integrative Evolutionary, and it is for pure-hearted warriors. We do monthly live, I facilitate monthly live transmissions and immersives. I also have literally 300 plus audio transmissions and a library inside of that space. We have a truly new paradigm community that upholds things like proper boundaries. I do not allow false light into this space. It has an application that's required. So we have a gatekeeping process, which means that the community is kept pristine and in alignment to include energetically and otherwise. If that speaks to you, make sure to apply for this to this container. I also have an interviewing process, which is quite fun. We get to spend some time together, meeting one another inside of the interview. And if this transmission has met you well, otherwise, make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, let me know how it's landed. As always, so much love to each and every one of you.